Guys, this is Britton from Saber Royale. I have for you a review video of the SaberForge Count Dooku versus the Ultimate Works Count Dooku that I just finished filming, because I'm doing this out of order. So up next you'll see the review that I have posted. Thanks guys! Here we have the Ultimate Works Count Dooku and the recently released SaberForge Count Dooku. Going over some of the major differences first, we see that the Ultimate Works Count Dooku here in the front is made from cast and polished steel, whereas the SaberForge Count Dooku is made from aluminum that could be cast, but it is nickel plated, so that's a little difficult to tell. However, the lower section here is clearly cast and seems to me to be aluminum. I thought that it could be pot metal, however, it is not magnetic, so I am led to believe that it is aluminum. Some other major differences is that the Ultimate Works Dooku uses rubber grip sections, whereas the SaberForge uses aluminum that has been anodized black. As you can very well see, the Ultimate Works Dooku is quite a bit smaller than the SaberForge Dooku. The Ultimate Works has a 7/8 inch emitter, and I believe it has a 7/8 inch ID all the way through as well, whereas the SaberForge version has a 1-inch emitter and maintains their 1.125 or 1 1/8 inch ID throughout the majority of it. It is a little smaller in this section, but realistically you're not going to really be putting anything there. You're going to be running some wires there when you do install this. Going over some other major some other major differences in the measurements. We'll start with the pommels. You can see that the SaberForge pommel is quite a bit larger than the Ultimate Works. The SaberForge pommel actually measures out to be 2 inches in the outer diameter, and the Ultimate Works is 1.5 inches, so there's a ½ inch difference between the two. That may not be a whole lot, but honestly it looks like a ton, in my opinion. The Ultimate Works Dooku has a 1.27 inch, roughly, outer diameter for the grip section, whereas the SaberForge is 1.5 inches. And overall, the SaberForge is roughly 14.5 inches from tip to tip, whereas the Ultimate Works is just over 13 tip to tip, yes, including the claw itself. Then going over some of the things that are different between the two, as compared to maybe the Master Replicas LE version, as well as images from the movie Attack of the Clones on Count Dooku's lightsaber. There are some differences in the design. The major one that we can see from this angle is this lower piece here. Like Count Dooku's, the Ultimate Works goes all the way through this curved section and ends at where the red switch section starts, whereas the SaberForge version stops before it reaches that curved section, just like the first version of Corbant's Count Dooku as well. We see a lot of screws in here, so if that's something that deters you, a lot of screw holes. There are six screw holes in this section for the SaberForge version, whereas the Ultimate Works only has 3. But then again, the Ultimate Works does have 2 holes in their red switch screwing this in, whereas the SaberForge, it has none. And according to what I understand, it can be used as the switch if you put a tactile switch under it. Looking at it from the inside, there's a screw that holds it in place. I have not opened it up enough to really determine how a tactile switch is supposed to sit underneath there. But knowing what I know about SaberForge, I'm sure they didn't plan out too far how they were going to do it, other than just potentially gluing a switch beneath there. sounds like the kind of thing they would do. However, I don't have an installed version, so perhaps they have a better system for it. The Ultimate Works Count Dooku has their Covertech switch doubling as their recharge port, and they've also made these side buttons here actually usable, where they are switches. You can wire those up, and those can be your switches, whereas the SaberForge version just uses some brass button head screws. I really like the Ultimate Works, how they've done this. I think this is just very well done, very ingenuitive, forward-thinking, especially considering that even on the Ultimate Works Dooku, I've seen other people use this top piece as a switch as well. So you have some options, which I think is awesome. The SaberForge version also comes pre-drilled in the pommel. We can see here that it is pre-drilled for their newer recharge port system, which I won't speak on too much, but I understand is micro USB. I'm pretty sure it's micro USB. So that's there. I suppose it acts as another vent for sound if you're not going to utilize that. But they do have some vents here on the sides for sound as well. Overall, with the finish, I really like the polished steel that Ultimate Works has done. However, it certainly does not look as nice as the nickel-plated version, simply because you can't come in and polish this as well as you can make this look when it's just plated. And being made out of aluminum nickel-plated, it certainly is lighter than the Ultimate Works steel. I wouldn't say it's a ton lighter, because it's just so much bigger in size. However, it certainly is lighter. But it's bulkier, you know, so you gotta take that into account if you're considering actually using one of these sabers for any kind of combat, whether it be light or heavy. Personally, I don't do any kind of heavy combat. I do like some light combat. I'm a huge fan of 7/8 blades myself, so I am definitely partial to the Ultimate Works as well for that reason, compared to the 1-inch SaberForge version. But being a 1-inch blade, and being as light as it is, I can certainly see the potential for the SaberForge Count Dooku taking a lot heavier hits than the Ultimate Works potentially could. Now, that's just my opinion. That's nothing that Aaron Lynn or anyone from SaberForge might say concerning their own hilts. That's just what I believe from my experience in the hobby. So, I'm trying to keep this short, and I'm already running 8 minutes, so ultimately, my opinion is that the Ultimate Works is a lot nicer. But this is my opinion, again, because I really like 7/8 inch. I like the smaller outer diameter. I like the smaller length. I don't really care that it's that much heavier, being made of steel. I think that the polished steel looks nicer than the nickel plate, simply in terms of the color that it gives off. Though the nickel plate does look very nice in its own regard, it is a smooth finish and really just really does look very quite nice overall. I can't complain about it whatsoever. The lack of the rubber grips is something that I don't like, because I like rubber grips. I've heard some complaints about them peeling off on the Ultimate Works. I have not had my Ultimate Works Dooku that long, but nor have I had that problem. Perhaps I will in the future, but then again, that's something that's typical when you put rubber on top of metal. They can peel off, but that can also be remedied very easily. So for me, I really don't care. I like the grip. It feels much nicer than the anodized section here. But you know, to each his own. I think that there is a use for something like this. So, I think some people will really like it. I also grabbed a Graphics 2.0, so I'm going to move these out of the way here, take the stands out. And one of my personal sabers for comparison. So here's the Graphics 2.0. Putting that on the screen, looking at it, I just think, holy crap, wow. Wow. That SaberForge looks huge. It is the same OD here, outer diameter, as the graphics itself is, at 1.5 inches. So that's something crazy. And when you consider the size, it's definitely bigger. And I mean, the graphics is certainly not a small saber in terms of length and outer diameter. However, the SaberForge really kind of makes, I mean, it looks big. But, you know, the Ultimate Works, when you're talking about length, really is pretty long too. But then again, Count Dooku Saber is a longer saber when you're talking tip to tip with this, with it being curved and with the claw itself. So that's something to consider if you maybe don't like longer hilts. But for a comparison shot, yeah, I think you can really tell a difference between the three there. So I said that I also included, excuse me, also included a personal hilt. This was made by JQ Sabers, Quinlan Voss's saber. I just really love his design. But this is closer to like a Vader Vault style saber in terms of the length as well as outer diameter. It's thinner. I believe it's closer to 1.25 inches. I honestly did not measure it. But at max maybe 1.3. It is a very small hilt, and so I thought that perhaps more accurately represented what some of you might own out there. If you have a Vader's Vault, maybe a Havoc, that's probably a decent comparison. Or their Revan, or the Revan Elite, or whatever. But yeah, you can certainly see a good difference in size between these four hilts. So again, overall, I really like the Ultimate Works. I think Aaron Lynn did an incredible job with this saber, and I hope to see him release more in the future. This was limited to only 100 units, and I unfortunately did not get in on the run at the time. I wish I had, so I had to pick one up after the fact. That being said, if you're looking for a Count Dooku saber that can really potentially stand up to some dueling, I think that the SaberForge is probably a good choice. Being it has a 1-inch blade, and the structural design, from looking at it, from going over the dimensions and everything myself, I think it could handle quite a bit of abuse myself. And overall, it is a really nice hilt. I have to give SaberForge some credit here, because SaberForge gets a lot of crap, and well-deserving, they get a lot of crap. But they really did do a nice job on this, despite the size. That is the only thing that I can really say negatively about it, that it is just a pretty large hilt overall. Because it looks nice, it feels nice. It's overall a nice saber. So anyway, this is my review of the Ultimate Works versus the SaberForge. I hope you guys have found this at least somewhat helpful, if you haven't seen anything before. And I don't take a lot of videos, I don't take a lot of photos, I'm pretty lazy about it, but hopefully you'll stick around to see some more in the future. Thanks, guys.